great. She was doing big. She's eating well. Thank you to everyone who's already signed up to bring us meals or brought us meals. We're eating really well. We're not planning on having another baby, but if we were, I mean, all those meals are certainly keeping that in our mind. So, y'all are really sweet, really kind for that. And the other part that's important for me to do right now is, in my notes, it's actually not here, but it's lower expectations. Because I'm not used to trying to prepare a sermon when there's a baby around, and all of a sudden, the fitting things in on Saturday or Friday that I need to do, and I'm right there, so you didn't get your sermon notes. That was one of the things that got cut along the way. There's probably going to be a baby picture here. I know that's not what I expected to do. But instead, I just got a bunch of Bible verses up there for you. So, that's my apology as well. So, again, if the expectations are properly lower them further, and then I think we'll be ready to get started. So big changes for us, but we're going to notice right here in Luke 14, there's not a lot different, if you recall, from the book of Luke. We're going to be diving into some things that we've been on many times. Let's go ahead and let's look at verse 1 for us right here. It says, one Sabbath. All right, already, if you've been with us, you're like, oh great, here we go again. I bet you Jesus is going to do something, and people are going to be upset. We just watched the video on Sabbath, and that seems to be good, right? Like, probably the key phrase Jesus said, or one of them, is the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. But we're going to be fighting about it. We're going to be quibbling over it. We're going to be trying to decide the best way to, handle the Sabbath, and that's going to be in the front of mind right here. So we're already ready for that. And then the other part, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. Carefully watched. All right, well that comes to mind probably too. Let's look at Luke 6, verse 7, which says this: the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. So they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. Right, this has been happening for a long time. Luke bunches up together a number of disagreements with the Pharisees and Sadducees and teachers of the law have with Jesus, and they go from being at least open or wondering what he had to say to now watching him closely and trying to get in trouble, trying to find flaws in his game, in his mindset, in his teaching, and so they're out there, looking for that. So we see that again in this passage. They're sitting there, they're eating together, but they're looking for a way to accuse Jesus. And then other savvy Luke followers, they go, wait a minute, Sabbath? What else happened? Wasn't there healing on the Sabbath that's happened recently? Yes, the chapter before. Let's look at that. Luke 13, verses 15 and 16 says this. This is when Jesus saw a woman who was in need. He says, the Lord answered him, you hypocrites, doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water? And should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath from what bound her? And so he's saying, look, I know we have the different Sabbath laws and rules, but if you would untie your ox or donkey, why won't we untie this woman who's been this way for 18 different years? She deserves at least as much compassion as a barnyard animal. I like this quote from one of the commentaries I wrote. Diane Shen writes, Jesus is not choosing to give life to the neglect of the Sabbath law. Rather, he is demonstrating the true meaning of the Sabbath, which represents God's gift of rest and restorative wholeness. All right, so again, we're going to be looking at this again, but if it seems familiar to you, it's because, we recently have been talking about some of this stuff. So at the beginning in verse 1, it did say that there was an important Pharisee, right? So what makes someone an important Pharisee? Maybe it was strict adherence to the law, his age, experience. He was important. He spent a lot of time, effort, and energy, and now he's reaping the cultural rewards. And there's probably a mix that after time he could probably start to feel superior to other people around him because he's following the moral code in a greater way. But there's also something here that, again, we've touched on before. There's a lot of examples where Jesus is talking to Pharisees, Sadducees, teachers of the law. And one thing that kind of struck me this time is it is noteworthy that he does confront them many times, right? he spends a lot of time up in the north, in Galilee, around Nazareth. He could have avoided them. He could have just been kind of doing his own thing, his own kind of, sect, or having his group out in the wilderness, and never really confronting them, right? Never coming into contact with the religious leaders of his day, but he's not afraid to do it. He's not afraid to go toe-to-toe with them and challenge them on their belief system. I guess what kind of came to mind was sports to me for a little bit. Many of us have your favorite team. Some of it's the University of Florida, other ones. And I'm sure if I talk to you, if you have a favorite team, you probably remember when you won the World Championship, right? Or that national title, whatever it is. You probably remember it. You probably remember even more that national title when you beat another great team, whether it was a great quarterback on that team, or a big time rival, or something along the way. Again, we all like championships, but if we beat some kind of no-name, nothing team that happened to get there, it's not as memorable. And sometimes then, as we look back, it's that NFC championship game. It's that, I don't know, ALCS, kind of, it's something else where you took on that top rival that had some of the best players, and you defeated them on the way to that national title. And I guess what I'm saying is, Jesus didn't just go up against no-name fishermen and challenge them. He went against the religious leaders, the heady, big religious people of his day, and every time he came out unscathed. So that's one part. And then the other part I've always come to mind when he does this is he still is talking to them. He's still spending time with them. I think it can be easy to go, I disagree with them, so I'm not going to hang out with them. Or I'm not going to challenge them. Or I'm not going to love them. Or I'm not going to care for them. And I think we need to be doing both. Again, we're only finite people. We can only talk to so many people. But I think sometimes it can be, well, these kind of people, or these people annoy me so much I don't want to even be around them. And I'm just saying Jesus is around everyone. And he spends time with them, and he cares for them, and he loves them, and he's doing both. And what that balance is with your uncle or your aunt or whatever, right? I don't know exactly what that is. That's where the Holy Spirit comes in. But we want to continue to be caring and serving and loving. And also, when the Holy Spirit gives us opportunities to challenge or tell people about Him, we want to be able to do that as well. And we see that continually throughout the life of Jesus. Let's look at verses 2 and 3 again, where he's in there with a prominent Pharisee, and then you have this. There in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Sometimes people think this is dropsy. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? Now, some of the details of the story I don't know all the details, so it doesn't grab me in my head as well as say the woman who was just healed. And the point is I don't know if this guy's a plant, by the Pharisees, that they're like, hey, let's get the guy with dropsy to come over when Jesus is here. I don't know if he just wandered in, and he just happened to be there. I don't know if he heard Jesus was there and he's coming to him, wanting to be healed. We don't know. So you kind of can imagine any of those kind of scenarios in this situation. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? Right? So then he challenges them. He's like, all right, guys, you want to take a stand here? And they're not going to say anything. It's like they want Jesus to incriminate himself. And it's at this time where I did hit pause. I remember something earlier. One other thing that happens when time runs out is we don't get the baby pictures, and then the last thing I do are the Lord of the Rings, the Star Wars, and other analogies, right? And so what's happened is there's way too many missing. And this is a time for a little PSA again. It's summer. It's probably the worst time of the year for weather around here, am I right? Unless you like to go to the beach. This is a time where we have a little more time on our hands. And so this is a public service announcement from me. It's time to watch the Lord of the Rings if you haven't watched it. All right? It's 10 hours of your life, well spent. But here's the hard part. When I watched it the first time, you didn't have a phone to distract you. All right? So it's a lot better if your phone's not distracting you. All right, but the point is that I feel like it's my job to at least explain analogies or other things, or in some way when I'm going into it. But I think there could be a carve out for Lord of the Rings ones, and just kind of throwing them in there. And if you haven't done your homework, it's time. It's time. It's time to have that happen. So anyway, just saying that. And with that being said, the point is they're basically on the edge of Mount Doom. They've got all the way there, and they're hoping they can incriminate Jesus right here, and then it's gonna kind of fail right there. And they got right to that edge. You're like, oh, right, we got it now, and then it's not going to work out. Anyway, there you go. PSA over. Exodus 20 verses 8 through 11. Let's look at this Sabbath law from the Ten Commandments. This is what it says. It says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So in some ways, I think they're going, look, man, it's in the Ten Commandments. Look at the details here. This guy's been sick for a while. It's like that lady. The lady's been in this situation for 18 years. You can't wait another day? How hard is that? I mean, is the person dying of dropsy right now? They're not dying. Wait another day. We got you. It's in the Ten Commandments, man. We got you now. That's the point, right? We got to see that, there's a difference between, what's that there, right? And then the intent behind it. And I think we still, in the church, that's what a lot of our arguments are, right? Versus, this is the letter of the law, versus the intent. And sometimes we get either one wrong. It sometimes feels safer to go, what does it exactly say? And then sometimes we can end up just like the Pharisees here, being condemned by Jesus. Because we miss out on the intent behind the law. All right, let's keep going. Let's look at verse 4 and what Jesus says. Again, they remained silent, so taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. He gave him an opportunity. You want to defend not healing a guy today? You want to jump up there, Frank, and give your best argument for that? They all stay silent. Nothing happened. So he healed him. They stayed silent. And, then he asked them a question, verses 5 and 6. If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out? And they had nothing to say. Because again, he's kind of got them. He's like, you would do that. You would lead your ox in the water. You would pull them out of the well. We wouldn't call that work, right? And now I'm trying to free someone on the Sabbath day right here. Why not do that? It's a little bit too I don't know the best way of putting this, but sometimes we might go, if I had a lot of money, I would spend it this way. Or if I had that athletic ability, I would really work hard. Or if I was that smart at math, then I would study really hard, things like that. But the whole idea is that I'm not for some reason. So it's easy for them to go well, if I could be on the Sabbath, I would just wait till the next day. Yeah, you can't, though. That's kind of some of it, right? You're not the Son of God. You can't do that. So, cool that you were willing to not do it on the Sabbath, but you can't even do it at all. Anyway, so again, he's kind of God here, and so now they're more frustrated again. He's made that point, and again, I want to note again that in some ways Jesus is breaking the Sabbath law. But in other ways, he's completely not breaking the Sabbath law because of what the intention is behind it. And he shows them that intention. The Sabbath was always to be a gift to people. It was supposed to help. It was supposed to give you a freedom, to not be able to work, to focus on God, to everything that video was talking about. And if they've now taken that law as a way of, well, now I'm better than you because I do less work than you. Now I'm better than you, and so this is one more way that I can show that I'm better than all of you because I don't work on the Sabbath. Well, that's not the point of it. Well, we're not going to heal this person because that will show that I'm more holy or more spiritual or more of a follower of God than you. They're like, hold on, that is not the point. Why not free this person who's been in bondage to this, to this illness today? Today of all days would be the best day to do it, is what is Jesus' point. All right, so now verse 7, I don't know if this is the same thing, the same group, another time. It could easily be the same group, but we're kind of going to another thought here. When you notice how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. All right, so Dave's going to go through parables this summer. We went over the Good Samaritan last week. Excellent parables. So many things that really tie into this one as well. There's a bunch of them in Luke. There's ones that come to mind, right? The prodigal son, other things. I'm sure none of us ever thought of this one. Because as we read it, we're going to read it and be like, are you sure? Like, are you sure that's a parable? Kind of seems like giving advice. All right, James 4:10 says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. So I'm going to read this really quick again, and I want us to see that some of this probably seems like advice. Verses 8 through 11. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you're invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. When I read this, I kind of thought of a wedding. How many of you have been to a wedding recently? Not too many. All right. Maybe not any. All right. Well, to remind us of weddings, most weddings I've been to, right? There's, people, maybe there's a bride side or a groom side, and near the front, grandma and parents and other people kind of sitting up here. Well, imagine, I don't know, you came from a completely different culture, you're invited to a wedding, you got the time on, you show up 5 minutes before the wedding. And you come on in, and you're like looking around, and the only seats available are up front. So you walk on up to the front, and you sit right here. What's going to happen? We're in the wrong place, right? What you do is show up to the wedding 5 minutes before. And then we know that, hang on, 2 minutes before the wedding, grandma's going to come in, and they're going to walk them down the aisle, or grandpa, or, they're going to be doing all that, and these seats are taken. And so if you do that, someone's going to come up to you, the wedding planner, or somebody else is going to, the officiator, the pastor is going to go, oh, buddy, you got to get back there. This seat is not for you. You got to get back to your place. Right? So that's a little bit of what's going on, right? This is like a dinner party. There's 2 places that are the best place. So don't go into that party and take the top place. Don't go to the wedding and pretend like the front row is for you. If you're, if you just are a distant cousin or something like that, that's not your place. Well, all right, good advice, right? But what makes this a parable? Be humble. Don't do something silly in a social situation, right? So I think there's something to be said for humility, for sure. But in my study, everybody doesn't agree with this, but I think a better take on this parable is something like this. I think Jesus is going, hey, look, religious leaders, you are doing a ton of fighting and clawing and beating back people to try to get the top place. You are fighting, clawing, you are putting people down with your extra rules, the Sabbath rules, all thinking that God only has so much love, so much care to go around. It is a scarce quantity, and so you're going to fight and go for it. In our house, we've recently started watching some of The Amazing Race. I think we like travel and seeing some different places, and if you know that show, I think the best teams are the ones who actually work together, and because only one team's getting eliminated each time, but sometimes in that race, there's people that have this mindset of I've got to come in first every single time, and I'm going to fight back, and just I'm going to lie to people and tell them the wrong directions and all these kind of things, because they're like, it's only one person who's going to win $1 million, and I'm going to be the one to do it. Right? So they're fighting and clawing all to get first place. And that's them. Jesus is going, there is God's love and compassion like I wanted it. I'm going to open it up to everyone. It's not just for Jewish people. It's not just for the religious elite. It's for everyone. It's for the Gentiles. It's for everyone is welcome at this table. By faith, you can have a relationship with me. But yet he sees so many of the religious leaders of his time are all about, again, fighting, clawing, pushing people down, showing them why they're not worthy, and trying to get to the top place at the table. And then ultimately Jesus is coming around and going, you know what? That's not the way you get there. And so I'm going to come up to you, and you're not going to have a seat at the table. I'm going to find someone else for that place. And that's shocking to them, right? They're like, again, I'm a Jewish person, you're going to tell me that Gentiles can be a part of this? You're kidding me. But yet, while they're still fighting and clawing and beating each other to get the top places, they're completely missing out on what's going on. I said this book, I said, doing all the Bible things, prayer, Bible reading, memorization, fasting, is not so you can act like you're better than other people. Yes, we want to grow closer to God and in our love for other people. But if my time with God leads me to feeling superior than others, then something is going horribly wrong. And that's certainly a part of what's going on with them. Again, they're trying to lift themselves up by putting other people down. Let's go on. I'm going to kind of continue to touch on this. Verses 12 through 14. Then Jesus said to his hosts, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you'll be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Again, I think the idea here would be, if you're of that age and you have kids' birthdays, right? They keep going to kids' birthdays and they go to their other friends and keep buying their presents and it's on and on and the gift-giving cycle continues, right? But if you went to the park and you just invited all the random kids that were there that day and you gave them a party and you gave them things, you're not expecting to get repaid in any way, right? In this way, and in the story that we're not going to get to today, but the parable coming up, Jesus is really showing that instead of trying to get that smaller group and fighting to keep people down, I'm just opening it up for everyone. I want everyone to have a relationship with me. I want, go everywhere. The Gentiles, everybody needs to learn about me. That's what we're looking for in my kingdom. Again, one way of seeing the Pharisees' mindset is in Matthew 23, verse 13. It says this, woe to you, teachers of the law, and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Again, is your mindset trying to close the door, trying to make it harder and harder for people to have a relationship with God? And in the end, it's not making you any closer to God. It's just also, hurting those around you as well. Here's a quote from Tom Wright. He says, if I reckon that I deserve to be favored by God, not only do I declare that I don't need his grace, mercy, and love, but I imply that those who don't deserve it should have it. All right, so as we're kind of getting there to wrapping up, there's one more story that I usually don't go forward in Luke. I usually just go back because we'll get there. But, in a couple of years, we'll get here. But this is, again, I think really sees the mindset that I think Jesus is really trying to get at in this parable. And this is a famous one. So, again, I'm not going to go into it a ton, but I just want to read it for us to keep in mind. It's Luke 18, starting in verse 9. It says this. To some who are confident of their own righteousness and look down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. And then we have the other person. The tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And it wants to see that this is both life-giving, as especially if you've made mistakes, if you've not done the cultural things or done all those law steps, and you're like, oh, this is life-giving. Even as tax collector can have a relationship with God through mercy and through grace. But if you run the race, if you were on top of the other game, you're getting upset by hearing this. You're saying, I don't want you to change the rules on me, right? We're not playing soccer with our hands all of a sudden here. What are you doing? And they're upset. I think one analogy is this, all right, if we can kind of get into it. Imagine you went to college, right? You went to college, maybe you went to grad school, you studied really hard at your field, and now you've been working in that field for 20 years, you've been advancing, you've been, getting raises, you're doing really well there. And all of a sudden you're about to be the manager, or you're high up in your company, and you interview and everybody says you're going to get the job. And then right at the last minute, the owner gives it to his son or daughter. How would you feel? Feel like that's unfair. It's called nepotism, right? What are we doing? You can't just jump into the front of the line. Well, again, we all know how we feel in that way. And to that degree, I think that's how some of the religious leaders are going. They're going, you're telling me that this tax collector sinner is getting into the front of the line in God's grace and mercy? That's not fair. We've worked hard on this. You can't be changing up the rules on us. But that's the whole thing. If that child is, in one case, that's just nepotism. In the other side, it's that person is now a child of the king. So of course they're going to be a part of that kingdom. Because through grace and through faith in Jesus, they're now a child of the king. So again, I want us to see that there's other areas of our life where we have struggled, we have worked hard, we've got better at it, and we want that pat on the back. We want to see, that we've done great at, whether it was that sport, that job, that family situation. We want that. And then there's this way of which Jesus is offering that grace and mercy to those who need it. And the point that he's also doing is, even if you've done great at that job, or even if you were trying as hard as you could to be a good religious person, Pharisees and Sadducees, you still need more. You still need one, and two, you're so wrapped up in this is the only way to do it that you're missing out. And I think that's where he's really trying to soften their hearts, right? He's trying to soften their hearts by going, you think you're following the Sabbath law? You think the Sabbath law is about keeping people in bondage? The Sabbath came out when you were freed from slavery. Why do you think this is supposed to keep them in slavery? Because you need to rethink everything if that's your mindset. So he's trying to have them do that. There's one more that I think I added right at the end that I will admit, I feel like that I saw this the first time, it didn't quite make as much sense to me, but I was reading something in between, and yes, there's parts of preparation, but I want us to see, again, just the love and kindness of God. He's asking us to follow him, right? He's asking us to serve him and to be his followers. Let's look at this one more time. It was in Luke chapter 12. He says this, be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning. So be prepared, right? Like servants waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. So that's a picture of what we're to do as followers of Jesus. To be prepared, to be ready, to be serving him, to be caring for those around us, to be living out the fruit of the Spirit, to be, living for him. And then it says this, it will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will dress himself to serve, and will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. And why do I say this? Because we're not just serving someone who's random. We're serving someone who cares about us deeply, who, when we follow him, he wants to come to us, and he wants to come and he's going to serve us. He's going to care for us. He's going to lovingly give of himself for us. That's what this person is doing. The whole idea of this picture is like he's at a wedding banquet, and he's going to sneak away from the wedding banquet to go serve those who are following him. All right? And that's our God. Not only is he great, not only is he big, not only is he wonderful and mighty and holy, but he's a God who wants to come alongside us and compassionately passionately give of himself to us. And so that's some of our motivation to be too. Like that's some of the reason that we can love and care for people sacrificially around us as well. Alright, so with that being said, the other thing that happens when we're short on time is application or wrapping it up tightly, right? So again, as we leave, more Sabbath shenanigans, more Pharisees getting things wrong. I'll just say this, that it is so easy to have this happen, right? I think I've shared before, in my life, I would have been a really good Pharisee, but not Pharisee, like youth group kid. I had the youth group kid stuff down. I was good at doing the right thing. I was good at reading my Bible. I memorized lots of the scripture. Like, I did that, and then at some point in doing that, you want credit for it. You may know you're not supposed to, but you want, plenty of adults to say, what a wonderful young man you are. And then at some point, you also want God to give you some credit. Because I'm doing more, and I'm doing better at the Bible stuff than everyone else. So I want credit for it. And if that's our motivation, and if that's what's behind it, then why are we doing it? And you need a wake-up call. And just like I need a wake-up call, these Pharisees and other people need a wake-up call as well. Yes, we want to follow God, we want to serve Him, we want to do that. And part of that is because He's a loving and sacrificial and caring God to us as well. He loves us so much. Not to get a pat on the back, not to feel superior to other people. That's